Hi guys, it's Mike again. I am making yet another video to try to introduce you guys to some new rule content that I think you might be interested in, but by making these videos, hopefully I save some time on actual game day. So let's just jump right into it. I don't think this will be a long one. You guys are familiar with the core races in the core rulebook: Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Half-Elf, Half-Orc, Halfling, and Human. All of those are available to you guys on any team except the D team, the one you are currently playing. Those guys will always be human. But I know you're looking to convert your 5e characters for the C team and the A team into Pathfinder, and having some racial options is important. So these seven races are available as written in the Pathfinder book. You may or may not be aware that Pathfinder also has rules for creating new races, and I'm sure you're aware that they actually have a lot of races already created in both some of their own splat books, and then of course there's a lot of third-party splat books out there too. The problem with some of what they've created is that, let's see if I can find it here in the rules. So when you create your own race, you decide their power level. Are they a standard power level, an advanced, or a monstrous power level? All of the core races are built according to these rules, which is kind of cool, and they are built as standard power level races. However, if you go looking for sort of like their version of the Aasimar or the Tiefling or some of the elf variants or whatever, they've made them as advanced characters. And in an effort to create a more balanced playing field, I don't want you to have the option to take a advanced race because, I mean, they're advanced. They're better. They have more points and therefore more bonuses. And so why would you ever play a dwarf if you could play a super Aasimar or whatever? So these rules are, of all the rules in Pathfinder for doing original and custom stuff, I don't think any are more well put together or more easy to understand than these. So I have, as you might guess, gone through and created some of the custom races that I think we will need, including some that they had already created, but they had created as advanced races. So that should kind of catch you up to what I was thinking. I'll remind you that out on my World Anvil page, I have got a very long list of potential starting races. This is based on the 5e books. They're pulled right out of 5e. In the game these days, it is unlikely that I'm ever going to let you play as a hobgoblin or a lizard folk or any of that. So someday I may clean this list up. But for now, it's out here, and we know which ones of these we can use and which ones we can't. Or if you don't, you can ask me. This list, by the way, is good not just for seeing what races, but it's here to show you what starting languages you get, and that is unchanged. I give more starting languages than Pathfinder does, but I also have a lot more languages than Pathfinder does, so there's some attempt at balance in there. So let's talk a little bit about the races I've created. I've got the Dragonborn, the Eladrin, which I created pretty much exclusively so Therian would have a home if he wants to use it. I will say that as you convert your A and your C team characters, you are not required to remain the same race. If there's something about these rules that make you say, you know what, I'd really rather be a dwarf than an elf, then we'll just pretend like that's the way it always was. You know, there's no reason to accept one of these if it has something in it that you really don't like. And I'm open to suggestions on changing some of these, within reason. So I've also created a moon elf, and I'll talk a little bit about elves as we go through this. I created an Aasimar, because, Spindrift. I've created a Tabaxi, the cat people that run around Chult. Again, Paizo actually created something called Catfolk that were advanced. So again, they were just a little too cool, although I did borrow a little bit of the ideas from it. And then lastly, I've got my Neliac, my half ice giants that have always been around. I went ahead and created them. I made a list of things I may create someday. Kobolds, tieflings, and yuan ti are all races that I wouldn't really have a problem with a character playing, and if that's something that you guys are interested in, then I'll flesh them out at some point. Obviously, the kobolds live near Jonestown and are becoming more sort of human settlement friendly. Tieflings are just cool, so I have to keep them around. And the yuan ti, at least a subset of them, are sort of getting a little less evil, thanks to the rise of Dendar's religion. So I'll quickly run through the Dragonborn and each of these. I'll start with the Dragonborn. First off, if you click a link here, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but out on World Anvil, I have got a sort of an origin story for where the Dragonborn came from. The Dragonborn in my world are a created race. They were created to defend a kingdom, and then they fell into disgrace, and they're kind of hunted around the world. And there's a limited number of them. They don't breed. They don't have a nation. They don't have a real culture. Anyway, feel free to come out here and read the story. I think they're cool. I've got these subtypes. Are part of the Paizo built-in thing. Some subtypes get sort of bonuses, like for instance, elves get low light vision. Reptilians don't get any bonus, and they are reptilian. I've got a brief description of them here next to their size, just so you kind of know what you'll look like. Their speed is 20. You see their ability score spread, and again, in the creation rules, there are different ways to do ability scores that cost different sets of points. The standard is to have +2 to a physical, +2 to a mental, and -2 to one or the other. And that doesn't cost you or save you any points. Whereas you see, like, being slow gives you 1 extra point to spend by being a negative. The languages were pulled straight from that language sheet that I had up just a minute ago. And again, if you start with standard starting languages, then there's no bonus or change in how many points you have to spend. There's an advanced version of the languages that I don't use at all in the design process because, again, my language rules are kind of customized and they don't really dovetail well with that concept. And then the racial traits are what you really care about. In this case, they're battle hardened, which gives them a plus to their CMD. They're familiar with a couple of cool weapons. They've got a breath weapon that I've spent some extra points on to make it a little cooler. They've got 60 feet of dark vision, and they've got a couple of skills that are always class skills. So that ends up costing 10 points. I have used, over here in this left column where it says battle hardened and weapon familiarity and so on, these are the exact names of these powers from the creating new races page. When Paizo creates them, they give them original names, keen senses or elven magic or whatever, but I have, at least for now, left the names exactly the way they are in the creation rules so that when you go to find them, you'll find what you're looking for. I could call the breath weapon Dragon Heritage or something like that, but then you wouldn't know where to go find the rules for it. The Neliac, you guys have been playing my game for a while. You have a good feel for who they are. They are a giant subtype, which gives them the class skills of Intimidate and Perception. They're LeBron James big, but not actually large. You see their modifiers here, Con and Strength. I won't read every bit of this to you because otherwise this video will be very long, but you'll have a link to this video so you can come out here and see it. I'll just kind of scoot through it and see if I see anything here that might bring up a question in your mind. I think the Neliac are pretty straightforward. Let's scoot over here to the Tabaxi. Again, these are cat people. If you're not familiar with them, they're... most of their race was either wiped out in a huge war with the Shadow People, or a lot of them left when Mesro, the whole city of Mesro, teleported away to another dimension because Ross NC was bringing the walls down with a bunch of undead. So there are very few of them left, but they are interesting, and who doesn't want to play a cat? There's plenty of racial traits that are cat themed, like landing on your feet and climbing and cat's luck and that sort of thing. So they were fun to build, and they're there if anybody wants to play one. The Eladrin, like I said, I added for Ray's character Therian. So the standard elves in my game are sort of the haughty, I'm a little better than you, and they probably kind of are, good judges of character, a little capricious, don't really care for dwarves, kind of Tolkien-y, high elf, tropey elves. Other elves in my game, so the Eladrin are also elves, but they are migrants from a different dimension who came here to avoid a war. They're really kind of alien in nature. They're very focused on magic and planar stuff, and their abilities reflect that. So the things that elves always have, like their elven immunities and their elven magic and their keen senses and all that, don't necessarily apply to these custom elves that I've created. So the racial traits they have are what are listed here. They do have some overlap. I think I gave all my elves the immunity to magic sleep and the +2 to enchantments. There's also moon elves. Moon elves are like they're silver elves, they're sometimes called in the Forgotten Realms. They're the sort of urban, human-friendly elves. They're not secretive. They're not haughty. They're not hard to approach. They're, they enjoy being around people of other races. They like cities. There are a lot of what I think we sometimes think of half-elves as. And if you meet a half-elf, his elven parentage is almost certainly from a moon elf. So they're in a lot of ways very different than the standard elves, and you can read about them here. But if I don't have listed that they are familiar with weapons that have elf in the description, then they aren't familiar with those. So moon elves aren't trained in that militant way that the standard elves are, so they don't really know how to use those weird exotic weapons. At least not unless they get some special training for it. And then lastly, I've got the Aasimar here. They are what you would think they are. And again, there's already Aasimar in Paizo's world, but mine are different. Mine are the result of some union back in the woodshed sometime in your genetic past between a celestial and a human, and then sometimes that the genes line up just right that you end up with those racial qualities. They are, unnaturally gorgeous, and they, can eat Twinkies all day and not get fat and that kind of stuff. Again, you can read about it here, but this Lightbringer power is kind of cool. They're immune to any sort of light-based blindness or dazzling. They get +1 level any light spells they cast on somebody else. They can do the light cantrip. They can cast Cure Light Wounds once a day. They have wings, so they can fall, with style, like Buzz Lightyear. And that's basically it. While I was going through this, I finally had to just kind of come up with something. So all the elves are supposed to get low light vision, and you guys know there's no low light vision in my game. So I've created something called limited dark vision, which is dark vision, but it only goes half as far as normal dark vision. And if you happen to play one of the normal races, like an elf, a gnome, or a half-elf that would have low light vision, you can instead have limited dark vision. There still will be limitations on how far dark vision can go in my game, so kind of no matter what you do with items and that sort of thing, you'll probably never have more than 60 feet unless you turn into an animal that has more than 60 feet, but that's probably another video. So that was longer than I planned for it to be, but now there will be a link to these racial designs out on the boards and in Discord, and I am looking forward to your feedback. Thanks.